When we look at the Disney hero, we look at an image of either boys or girls, princesses or peasants, who find themselves in unlikely situations leading them to better their lives for the ones they love. They lead on with charm and hope against the most evil of foes in society that they could ever produce that challenges their own world perspective. Where for the most part, they're relatively normal people as you and I, so we can relate to them in some way depending on their personality traits or other developed characteristics. But then there was one character who changed all of those definitions within a single film, yet still remained relatable. One that lives on as one of Disney's most recognizable characters outside of Mickey and Friends in Stitch from Lilo and Stitch. Here we have a character that completely tosses out all of what we know about Disney protagonists in both past and present and just represents absolute chaos incarnate who barely speaks complete English. Something you think doesn't fit the image of Disney since he's so unpredictable and flawed with his own actions that could quite be dangerous. But because of his flawed, imperfect nature, he weirdly enough became one of Disney's most relatable characters to date and so beloved, living over 2 decades at the top when some of the other films of the era aren't as remembered quite as much. I mean, yes they are, but still, Stitch remains at the very top. Truly something that is timeless when you can market someone who describes themselves as fluffy that can sell as many plushies, right? But of course, that merchandise isn't the point of why the character remains popular and still is yet again because of those unconventional aspects as the main star, and how they made that the complete selling point to the audience that he's unlike any other Disney character that you've ever seen, causing chaos to their own nature as seen in the promos. Where for someone like me, he remains completely special in my own heart, considering the film did take place in my home of Hawaii, coming out when I was less than a year old living on Oahu. Of course, the story takes place on Kauai, but all the islands remain my home, where something like Lilo and Stitch just really remains in that special place in my heart, capturing those local aspects that Disney had rarely done up until this point. I mean, sure, you had a few films that took place during the modern time of its release, but this one really changed things for Disney above their fairy tale image, and Stitch was a part of that, whom I grew up relating to the most. Because the point of Lilo and Stitch as a story was to relate to the outcast characters whom most in society look down upon as being weird and never normal, but how through our ohana we can realize that our differences do not matter if we have people who love each other as one, with nobody getting left behind or forgotten. It is within this message that we realize how important Stitch is as a hero who represents those who can be described as erratic or unlikable on the surface with an ugly exterior and put down because of their monstrous abilities, but how they prove they can just be as worthy as those who apparently look normal. That in the face of adversity of people who judge those on the content of personality, we can show how wrong they are when we develop a sense of selflessness and a ohana who shares that same love for all that does exist. And of course, most important to talk about since this live action version does come out very soon, something I will watch with great interest knowing how much I love this film, worried if it gets butchered or actually perform better than expected. And evidently with the teaser of his new appearance, it frankly doesn't look quite bad and actually quite fluffy, might I say. Honestly, mixed on these feelings of what is to come from a character created by the talent of Chris Sanders, who will return to voice him yet again in that film. But besides that, because we are here to talk about Stitch and because of the popularity that has been exploding in recent years yet again, let us just take a look at Disney's most chaotic yet relatable hero ever made. His introduction shows us someone who is not really a hero and more of a genetic experiment of self-proclaimed evil genius Jumba Jookiba. Both of them obviously displayed on trial for illegal genetic experimentation with his destructive experiment 626.
What you see before you is the first of a new species. He is bulletproof, fireproof, and can think faster than supercomputer. He can see in the dark and move objects 3,000 times his size. His only instinct to destroy everything he touches.
Where Jumba can't help himself but to describe him created perfectly for destruction and only destruction, incapable of doing anything other than that can be remotely described as good, that is also confirmed by his own alien gibberish that offends the council. Like at our very first meeting and look of him, we see a creature who is unworthy of being called good and mostly bad despite the inquiry to see who he actually is, setting him apart to be a creature of chaos that we suspect, and more something that can be described as an anti-hero. The ones that nobody could have the guts to like, as an abomination against nature described by Captain Gantu, and all that can be harmful to the greater good. And the creature himself revels in these notions and facts as he is locked up, but how that could never stop him being designed to destroy anything anything and all within its path, with its small, agile body. Like he's smart enough to do anything as long as it causes destructive potential to his feeble, feral mind. Because although he is gross and feral like a mindless creature, Jumba specifically designed him to think as fast as a supercomputer, given such tremendous strength, calculating the next move to build something up while tearing it completely down just as fast. As it has been said, he demonstrates his ultimate purpose that was designed as he was made for it, escaping and evading security, eventually crash landing on Kauai by pure luck when his molecular density couldn't survive water as they originally thought. Like all creatures that are designed for, some nefarious purpose, they also have to have a weakness. But of course, during said events, he gets knocked unconscious, sent to a dog shelter where he hides his alien attributes to fit right in when he meets with Lilo to make his escape and settle in his grand plan or purpose he was designed to do. Where Lilo is this girl who had been ostracized by some of her peers as weird, who makes this distinct connection with Stitch, whom she just named as such. Of course, to the others, unlike Lilo, they make the same assumption of an abominable creature who barely looks like a dog and a mixed breed of some genetic experiment, thinking it was dead at first when they got them. The drilled setting where you get a creature designed to look and act a certain way that isn't worthy of love or praise and mostly hatred, as they are meant to ruin everything that involves such concepts. Where he has to deal with the task that Jumba was given with Agent Pleakley to go to Earth and try to capture him before he causes such chaos, which he tries at every turn and avoid himself being captured, hiding behind Lilo as her dog with such cover. An event that makes it hard for other characters like Nani, being Lilo's older sister, to try and keep custody of her from being raised by foster parents or whoever, since their parents tragically died before said events of the film. And how Stitch just tries to make it as hard as possible for her to do so, since he is that genetically designed creature destroying everything in sight in society. Not because he wanted to hurt them, but because again, he was designed to do so. And how he finds it hard to do so by his attitude, when Jumba also explained that his attraction is to large cities to cause such chaos, like he was supposed to be a Godzilla type of creature, but how that cannot be because he landed on Kauai that's more of a rural small town island feel rather than Oahu that has a major city like Honolulu, meaning he couldn't do as much as he would like.
His destructive programming is taking effect. He will be irresistibly drawn to large cities where he will back up sewers, reverse street signs, and steal everyone's left shoe.
It's nice to live on an island with no large cities.
In this journey, we find that he's searching for something that he was made to do, but he finds it really hard to actually do so, while Lilo tries to teach him like any other dog owner would do without batting an eye to his brash exterior. That she fits right in because she has an understanding for other creatures like himself when she had designed other weird dolls like Scrump, who other girls fear and hate because again, she is that same ostracized kid. That things like this show how she's made to push others to be the best even when they can't see it yet, ignoring the relative stagnant opinion society tries to push, doing what she feels is best rather than what they feel is the worst. And how it takes time for Stitch to really learn with what she is saying, because all he can really think of how he's designed of how best to tear down a society apart. You see this everywhere he goes, pushing people down, wrecking public structures, and just being a public nuisance. Nothing that is worthy of him being a hero, as he keeps making it harder for Nani and Lilo to keep this family together when she loses her job or does some weird things to her house, where at any moment you would think Nani would remove him for good since he's making these things worse, but how Lilo keeps insisting to actually have him because it gives her life meaning once again. And of course, teaching Stitch in that very scene of the concept of ohana and what it means to be family, meaning nobody gets left behind no matter who they are or what they can do. And this is where I want to take a detour for a second to explain the side of criticism against Stitch and why that is terribly wrong when you think about the reasons he does exist. For the most part up until this point, and something you will see me explain later in other scenes of the film, Stitch is nothing but trouble. Nothing he does is worthy of anyone's praise or like, and he's just making life a living hell for these two sisters, losing jobs or destroying other people's property, generally making everyone fear him and making it hard for them to keep custody of each other. That it is a fatal flaw to have him as a character, because we try to root for the characters of Lilo and Nani succeeding in healing their broken family, but now it's going to be ripped completely apart in a short amount of time because of this creature that is designed for destruction. I mean, okay, sure, you can hate him for that, you're not supposed to sympathize with him doing these things, but that's kind of the point to have him there. To have someone who can learn to find his place in the world as he did not know it quite yet. You have to realize that things have to be lost in order for people to be found. profound. Chaos is within our own nature as humans or other creatures that live within this world that God had created, and how we all have to work together to realize the bad we do is not who we were meant to be for purposes that make life what it was designed for in the first place, if you understand that journey. And if you understand that journey, then you get why he is an important character to have, to learn to accept all things big or small, where we remind ourselves even though some people might describe themselves as evil geniuses, or Gantu works against the actions of the main heroes at times, this film really has no villains. No real described villains quite yet until, later on with Hamsterville and all, but how this first film just focuses on characters who can be described as villains or demons, but know that they are really not, that they are something more, and everyone needs to see that. And if we don't have that conflict, there's nothing to root for in the growth of their family, or to actually gain what was once lost. These are things that get confirmed the night after events when Nani got fired, and when he made and destroyed a model town of San Francisco just like that, with nothing left to do right after. That all of his efforts, especially knowing the island he had been on, just resulted in nothing more he could do that Jumba jumps in and observes.
626 was designed to be a monster, but now he has nothing to destroy. You see, I never gave him a greater purpose. What must it be like to have nothing?
This is the real turning point of the film that sets things apart for himself, because now you have a character who questions his own very existence, implemented with the parameters to be a monster, but not knowing what that could truly bring to his life. What is the true purpose of my existence, and why do I feel so empty completing something that wasn't huge enough to begin with? Why do I feel sad like I have nothing at all, even though I was designed to be a happy, destructive monster? And he finds some of these answers within the tale of the Ugly Duckling, referencing Walt Disney's classic cartoon where this duckling was rejected by his initial family for being ugly when he looked different than them, until he found his real family at the end who he belonged to the entire time. A tale that grips Stitch in searching of something meaningful, since nobody likes him at that point and there's nothing he could really do anymore in the state he currently lives in. Where his development begins alongside this difficult road where Jumba and Pleakley still tried their best to capture him as ordered. Nani now having the task of searching for a job, and Lilo doing the best to teach him to fit in, in order to find his family with those very characters. But even as he performs his best, he still succumbs to his worst implanted behaviors, causing another wreck on the beach, which sadly also in turn leaves him wrecked with great guilt after Lilo and Nani's efforts turn into yet another failure. And another failure after that, despite the happy break he enjoys on a Hawaiian roller coaster ride surfing with David and the girls that brings joy of what life could bring since Cobra Bubbles observed their decimation, and of course how Jumba was pulling them back, which wasn't really his fault since he was trying to protect them, but how their own efforts just reinforced the bad image that isn't completely true, and the fact that he can't really survive underwater. And as most people pointed out in their hollow criticism of Stitch, David did point out a truth that made him realize he couldn't be a part of this very family, the Ohana he had been searching for.
I really believed they had a chance. Then you came along.
These scenes that they showed, especially when Nani sings Aloha Oe as a somber farewell to her own sister she will lose custody of, shows us the true vulnerabilities of Stitch's character, trying to be better than what he once was, but can't actually doing it because he was designed for a certain way. Finally trying to remove himself from that equation to ensure their own happiness since he himself cannot create such a thing. But before he leaves Lilo and the others, she completely says he understands why he acts this certain way. Not from the perspective of Jumba's experiment creation, but from a personal point of view that treats Stitch as his own.
I hear you cry at night. Do you dream about them? I know that's why you wreck things and push me.
He cries at night because he never had a family to call his own other than his maniacal creator, desperate to just find someone to be a part of, and the damage he causes is more out of pain not knowing what love can really be. And this is why he's a relatable character more than any other Disney has created to this point, because his chaos comes from a sense of unworthiness that is unsure if people will accept their existence, wanting the comfort of their peers or any other creature that inhabits this life, but yet not finding that. I know I'm probably embellishing this situation, but it perfectly describes how sometimes we can feel empty not knowing if people like us if we are born certain ways like Stitch, and how we act certainly irrational to others when we just want to be with them. The sad moments where Stitch really proclaims himself to be lost out in the open like the Ugly Duckling himself, and the next day when he faces Jumba, he expresses this guilt of him wanting a family to belong to, but how this could never be since he reminds him specifically he was made to destroy.
Maybe I could.
You're built to destroy. You can never belong.
But how he runs back for safety because he knows he's more than that. He feels something and he wants to find what that feeling is. And this safety just doesn't last long because Jumba can do whatever he wants since they were fired the day of, so he chases them down and causes destruction as they were all designed to do. That Lilo and Nani's house gets finally torn apart physically as it was represented mentally to remind us that chaos always indeed follows his wake, but now how you know it's done for a purpose of protecting what he loves, including when he reveals to Lilo that he was indeed an alien, showing the truth because he wants to be something more, but how yet she remained angry at him for lying, not based on the fear of who he really is, well, because aliens already attacked their house, but just not being honest with her since he comes from people like Jumba and causes destruction and chaos just for the sake of it. It's a relatively short moment though, since Gantu was also there to capture Stitch and take him away for who he was, but it admits more about Lilo being ready to accept him a part of the family since the first time that they met. Yet he couldn't actually realize this or comprehend such feelings until it was too late alongside his journey. But finally, within the company of Nani and the others, he expresses how much this actually means to him within Ohana.
Ohana means family. Family means nobody
gets left behind
or forgotten. Yeah.
The lesson you need to learn in this part is how this journey was meant for his character to grow. Stitch needed Lilo more than Lilo needed Stitch as a companion who she can relate to and know that people out there really do care even if they're designed not to at all, and how others just couldn't see it yet since it looked like he just caused destruction. But how sometimes in our lowest moments in life, we find others who we can relate to the most in our situation to pick us up to become the best, using his superior abilities to finally rescue Lilo and stop Gantu, to show that it can be used for good because he loves her.
You came back.
Nobody gets left behind.
This is the kind of scene that showcases why the film was called Lilo and Stitch. Yes, Stitch was the first character conceptually created and the most memorable that all of us know of, but Lilo also played her part here to discover who he was as a person, or like a person since he's still a fluff ball. That even the most monstrous looking devils can be saved by the love and care of another, where life is more important than death or destruction and the mayhem that someone was supposedly meant for. And in turn, when he gets chained up ready to face justice of the Grand Council, he reminds the Grand Councilwoman that his name is Stitch, no longer hiding behind the generic numbers like Experiment 626 they have all come to know. A chance to relay his own character in the life he had found when landing on this strange little rock in a strange little home with a strange little family.
This is my family. I found it all on my own. It's little and broken, but still good. Yeah, still good.
That yes, above all, even while it may be broken, it still is good like many others are. We all may fight as most families do on certain issues, and we may disagree on some potential and others may harm, but the smallest things can make the biggest changes to realize how it's all good, how a family is all one and they stick together no matter the cost. Our Ohanas consist of several different individuals that are made up of the same love no matter how hard one might fall or tilt in their personality. We make each other stronger despite our differences, and it's up to us as a bunch to realize how much that can matter and why he remains solid as the best of its type. His flaws and destructive capabilities may alienate him from the image of a hero in a group of kind, brave souls that have trekked across the plane to go the distance, but not to its audience that is made up of young and old of different shapes and sizes and opinions that proves all can be heroes of our own story and community. And most importantly above all, in the important value of family that is fun and charming and especially cute and fluffy. A piece that is well rewarded and confirmed when he himself is stitched onto the picture of Lilo and Nani's family with their father and mother, now finally getting the meaning of his very name. That despite being broken at times, including when he breaks everything himself, he truly stitches everything together because of how love saves all. Sure, this ending might seem more cliche like everything else we read into, but I think it's the most effective of its type. We came into this knowing about Stitch when you saw these promos of him ruining other Disney characters in the most important movie moments they have, saying that this was something completely new and destructive unlike anything you've seen, and beginning with him completely wrecking everything until we understood what he really stood for himself. It's the best type of growth for a hero that says something different yet leads us to the goal we've been all searching for in good, where everyone seems to completely agree with that very image. And those facts presented to him and to us as an audience, above every other single apparent cute, marketable character that had been created for other films, just makes him completely timeless and so relevant today as he was 22 years ago. And as long as those facts are present, he will be as popular as Mickey Mouse around the world in the next century. Our little chaotic hero who is the best that there ever was and always will be. And I'm all done. Goodbye.